Why would someone smile while the world is ending around them? Not a party smile, not a fake everything's fine grin. I mean the tiny, exhausted kind of smile you've maybe seen in real disaster footage. People standing in water up to their knees, roofs gone, futures wrecked, and somehow they're still cracking jokes, still passing food, still almost gentle with each other. It really makes you wonder what's going on inside a mind that does that. Is it denial, madness, or is it a kind of quiet technology nobody bothered to name? That's the idea I keep circling tonight. Joy not as a mood, but as equipment, like a flashlight or a first aid kit. A thing you reach for when you smell smoke. So as you settle in and let your day fall a little further away, imagine this with me. A ring-shaped college in deep space, so perfectly safe that the lights never flicker, and nobody even owns an emergency bag. And on that ring, in a room full of alien students, studying old recordings of Earth tearing itself apart, there's one human, Leila Carter. She's watching her own planet burn on film, and she knows exactly why those people in the rubble are still managing to smile. In a moment, we'll sit beside her in that lecture hall as an alien top student finally asks the question no one else has dared to say out loud. The ring hangs in quiet space, turning so gently that most students forget it is moving at all. Nothing much changes here. The air is always warm enough. The light is always soft. Days pass in smooth lines without storms or sirens or sudden loss. Far below, in the old recordings, Earth has never known this kind of calm. An interspecies class leans forward in their seats as buildings fall, seas rise, and bright fire washes across old cities. They watch people running through floods, walking through rubble, holding candles in the dark. They see faces streaked with ash and tears, and then they see something that makes them draw back in shock. The humans on the film are smiling. The humans on the film are smiling. It is not a carefree party grin. It is not a silly joke face. It is small and tired and stubborn, sitting on faces that have seen too much. It passes between strangers and lines for food. It shows up in songs in broken streets, in shared meals cooked on sidewalks, in hands helping others climb over broken walls. Orrin Voss, top student of risk theory, cannot hold back a question. After all this, they ask out loud, why are humans still smiling? Across the room, the only human in the class takes a slow breath. Leila Carter has seen storms up close. She has bailed water from her own house as a child, laughing while her mother cursed at the rising flood. Now, in the safe ring where nothing ever breaks, Leila understands that this is why she is here. She stands, ready to tell a room full of careful minds that on Earth, joy is not just a feeling, it is a tool. The first thing new students notice about Meridian Collegium is how gentle everything feels. Gravity holds the body with a soft hand. Not too heavy, not too light. Walking along the inner rim of the ring feels natural, so natural that most minds forget about the spin that makes it work. The floor curves up in the distance, but it is slow and easy, not sharp or strange. The air has the same mild scent every day. Clean, slightly warm, touched with plant life from shared gardens. The temperature barely changes. It is never too hot, never too cold. Students joke that you could leave a cup of tea on a table for a week, and it would still be just right. Light comes from panels set into the high arch of the inner sky. It glows in soft gold during the waking period, then shifts without any harsh flash into a calm dusk. Nothing flickers, nothing slams on or snaps off. Time moves like a slow tide, and everyone can see the pattern. Schedules are just as smooth. Meals arrive on time. Classes begin and end with gentle tones. There are rest days every 8th cycle, planned festivals every quarter turn, and long-term calendars that mark events years ahead. Students from a dozen worlds live by these patterns until the body relaxes and expects safety. It is easy to believe that the ring will never fail. Leila Carter noticed this from her first week on the station. Back home in New Orleans, plans were more like suggestions. A bright morning could turn into a deadly storm by nightfall. Streets that were dry on Monday could be rivers on Wednesday. Her family kept a go bag by the door and waterproof bins stacked in the closet. They knew how far the nearest levee was. They knew which roads stayed above water longest. On Meridian, no one had a go bag by the door. At first, Leila loved the peace. She slept deeper than she had in years. She did not wake to check weather alerts in the middle of the night. She did not listen for the change in the wind. But after a while, the smooth days felt strange. It was like walking in a house where nothing had ever been broken, where no corner held marks of repair. Her dorm window showed the inner curve of the ring. Gardens ran along the central band. Study halls and labs opened in gentle arcs. Transit pods hummed along tracks, always on time. Beyond the transparent ceiling, the star Meridian shone steady and calm, with no storms big enough to see from here. Leila would lie back on her bunk, hands behind her head, and think, this place does not know how to flinch. During her second month, she signed up for an elective called Human Conflict History. The name made her wince a little. She knew how humans looked in some alien databases. Dangerous, stubborn, too quick to fight. Death world culture was the polite term. There were worse ones that people did not say out loud. So popular that students from other tracks tried to audit it. As Leila walked toward the lecture hall on the first day, she heard excited talk around her. Apparently, the 20th century alone fills half a cycle. A tall, glass-skinned student said. Their voice carried an eager edge, like someone before a hollow play, full of wars over land and fuel. I read that they used fire even in their sky battles. Another answered, actual exploding fire, not just kinetic pushes. Leila's stomach tightened. To them, these were thrilling facts. To her, they were the rough shape of graves. Professor Theo Wren stood at the front of the lecture hall when she entered. Wren was from a species called Talaran. Skin the color of deep moss, long fingers, short bone plates. Along the sides of their neck, they had the look of someone patient and careful. the kind of teacher who would rather ask questions than answer them. Seats curved in a gentle bowl around the main display field. Students settled in, tails and limbs and tendrils shifting, eyes of many shapes turning toward the center. Others leaned forward, empty-handed, ready to experience. Leila took a seat near the middle, not too close, not too far. A student with soft blue-gray scales sat on her left. They gave a polite nod, eyes flicking to the human in mild curiosity. On her right, a slim student with pale, jointed arms adjusted a harness strap and muttered to themselves about exam requirements. Professor Wren lifted a hand. The room quieted fast. "Welcome to human conflict history," Wren said. Their voice held a calm flow, clear and measured. Most of you have taken general comparative history. You know that humans have a record of violence that is dense. A faint stir moved through the hall. Some students smiled, the way tourists smiled before visiting a site known for storms, safe behind thick glass. This course, Wren went on, will present signals from human archives with as little filter as possible. You will see their wars, their disasters, their collapses. You will also track the social and technological changes that came after each event. We will ask not just, how did this happen, but also, how did they keep going? Lisa's eyes lifted at that last part. She felt a small push of relief. At least the course would include what came after. The room darkened. In the field at the center, old Earth rose into view. The room's dark rose into view. No lines, no nations, just swirls of blue and green and white. For a brief moment, the room was quiet, filled with the sight of her home before the first scene. Cut in, the first recordings were grainy and strange. Early 20th century. Soldiers moving through mud. Smoke rising in thick sheets. People running into fields as sirens wailed in the distance. Some alien students shifted in discomfort. Others stared with bright attention. The images moved forward in time. Bombed cities lit by firestorms. Columns of tanks rolling through ruined streets. Faces looking up at empty skies, waiting for machines that could end everything in a flash. Leila crossed her arms over her ribs and tried to breathe slowly. She watched her own planet tear at itself again and again. The images swept through decades. Streets full of protesters, police lines, drones over deserts, tall buildings falling in clouds of dust, floods swallowing neighborhoods that looked too much like home. Every time a new disaster appeared, some student in the room let out a sharp sound. A soft hiss, a low click, a startled intake of breath. To them, these were extreme scenes from a world that seemed almost cursed. To Leila, they were the long past and the recent near miss both at once. She saw a city flattened by an atomic blast, then scarred but alive again 50 years later. She saw New Orleans after one storm, then another, Waters rising and people still there, still building houses on stilts, still walking with brass instruments through wet streets. Professor Wren paused, the flow every so often to point out key shifts. Treaties signed after horror. New energy systems after fuel wars. Stronger building codes after earthquakes and hurricanes. Notice the pattern, they said. Conflict, loss, change, and then adaptation. But most of the class did not seem focused on adaptation. Instead, they hung on each new blow. A great tsunami crashing into a coast. A pandemic that filled hospitals and pushed whole regions indoors. Statues pulled down, governments falling apart, smoke over dense cities. Leila felt the weight inside her chest grow heavy, but she stayed. These were her people. This was their record, and it was being shown here in a room where nothing ever shook. After a long span, Professor Wren let the last clip fade into stillness. For a moment, the class sat in the dim light, stunned. The ring's gentle hum filled the silence. Then, Orrin Voss lifted a hand. Orrin sat near the front of the hall. Their body was long and flexible, wrapped in a pressure harness that allowed them to sit upright in human-style seats. Their skin shone with a faint silver tone, and their wide black eyes reflected the last images still hanging in the field. "Yes, Orrin?" Wren said. Orrin's voice carried clearly. "Professor, there is something I do not understand. We have seen 5 centuries of human disasters, both natural and self-created. We have seen mass death, slow damage, repeated harm, but in almost every set of images, there were humans smiling." A low rustle moved through the hall. Other students nodded. A few made faces of confusion. Orrin continued, speaking slowly, as if measuring each thought. "In my culture, smiling is very rare during crisis. It is seen as denial or insult. Yet we have just watched humans smiling while standing in rubble, while carrying bodies, while lining up for water. Why would they do that? How can they still smile after so much?" All eyes turned, almost as one, toward the only human in the room. Leila felt a heat rise in her cheeks. She swallowed. It would be easy to sink down in her seat to let Professor Wren answer, but that would mean leaving her people's faces in the room, without their voice. Professor Wren looked at her with calm respect. "Leila," they said, "you are not required to answer, but if you wish, your insight would be valuable." Leila unclipped her harness and stood. Her legs felt shaky, but her voice, when it came, surprised her by staying steady. "We still smile," she said, "because despair is dangerous for us." The room stilled, listening. "Despair makes people stop helping each other," she went on. "If everyone gives up at the same time, nothing gets fixed. No walls get rebuilt. No food gets cooked. No kids get comforted, so we treat joy like a tool that helps us keep going. Sometimes that looks like a smile." Several students shifted, taking this in. Sen Kale, a narrow-faced student with dark stripes along their arms, raised an eyebrow ridge but stayed quiet. Professor Wren nodded for her to continue. In New Orleans, Leila said, storms came a lot, big ones. Water in the streets, power gone, roof damage, the whole thing. My family had plans for that. We knew who would fill tubs with water, who would move the pictures to higher shelves, who would check on old neighbors. She took a breath, feeling the memory of heavy air and the sound of rain on boarded windows. But we also had plans for after. We planned who would cook on the grill when the stove was dead. We knew who could play music loud enough so people down the block could hear and come over. We knew how to tell jokes while we ripped up ruined floors. She looked around the hall at eyes of so many shapes watching her. If we did not do that, she said softly, people would sit alone in the dark and think about everything they had lost. They would stop calling each other. They would stop sharing what they had. Hunger and anger would grow. Crime would grow. That is how a bad week turns into a bad decade. So we laugh, and we sing, and we smile on purpose. Not because it is not bad, because it is bad, and we need to stay connected. The room felt even quieter than before. The machines under the floor hummed. The ring turned. Leila sat down again slowly. She could feel her own heart beating hard in her chest. She had not planned to say so much, but the words had come out once Oren asked. Oren looked thoughtful now, not excited. Senkail's eyes had narrowed in careful question. Professor Wren folded their hands. In our next session, Wren said, we will invite Leila to share more specific examples. For now, I ask that you hold this idea, that joy for humans may function as part of their survival system. Consider what that means for our understanding of risk and resilience. The lights in the hall brightened by a small degree, gentle and slow. Students gathered their things and stood. Conversations rose in pockets. Joy as survival. Leila heard someone say behind her, testing the words. Strange, as she walked out into the smooth corridor, Leila felt the steady gravity under her feet and the always safe air in her lungs. In this place where nothing broke, she had just tried to explain a world that was always fixing itself. She knew this was only the start. The next session of human conflict history filled even faster than the first. Word had spread around Meridian Collegium that the human student had spoken in class, not with defense or anger, but with something more careful and hard to name. Leila arrived early. She chose a seat a little closer to the front this time. Her hands felt cool on the armrests. Her stomach was tight, but there was also a small, steady point inside her. Leila stood. Her heart beat faster as every head turned her way, but she lifted her chin just a little. I am willing, she said, but I would like to ask for something from you all first. Professor Wren inclined their head. Please, ask. I want to speak plainly, Leila said. I am going to talk about death and fear and hard things. I will not try to make them sound nicer than they are. She had thought all night about what she wanted to say. Professor Wren entered with their usual unhurried steps. They greeted a few students by name, then turned toward the center field. In our last gathering, they said, Orrin Voss asked a question about human smiles during crisis. Leila Carter suggested that joy may act as a tool against despair. Today, we will set aside time for her to speak in more detail. After that, we will hold discussion. They looked toward Leila. Leila, you have the floor, if you are willing. In return, I ask that you remember, I am talking about real people, my people. Please do not treat them like characters in a drama. The room shifted. Several students looked down, a little ashamed. Orrin nodded, face serious. Senkale's stripes darkened, a sign of thought in their species. Professor Wren spoke gently. That is a fair request. Students, you are asked to listen with respect for the lives described. Agreed. A low wave of assent moved through the room. Leila took a deep breath. Okay, she said. So, I told you that despair is dangerous for humans. Let me explain that more. She walked a few steps toward the central field, hands loose at her sides. When people lose the sense that anything can get better, she said, they stop trying. That sounds simple, but the effect is very deep. When they stop trying, they stop sewing up for each other. They stop fixing problems. They stop making long-term plans. They do not store food. They do not keep up with schools. They do not take care of their own bodies. Then small problems pile up and everything gets worse. She paused, making sure the faces around her were still with her. So for us, she continued. Hope is not just a nice feeling. It is fuel, it feeds action. And joy is one of the ways we keep that fuel burning, even when everything looks hopeless. It helps us remember why we should bother to fix things. She lifted her hand slightly. The central field lit up with a simple image of a city by water. The shapes were abstract, not detailed, but the idea of streets and levees and houses on low land was clear. This is New Orleans, she said. My city. It sits by a great river and a wide lake, below sea level in many places. That means floods are always a risk. When I was little, there was a famous storm that hit years before I was born. You might have film from it. You might know it as one of the big 21st century hurricanes. Several students nodded. The disaster was a standard case in planetary risk courses. Levee failure, mass displacement, slow recovery. When that storm hit, Leila said, the water broke through walls that were supposed to protect the city. Whole neighborhoods went under. People died on rooftops, in attics, in hospitals. It was not just nature. It was planning failures, money failures, neglect. A lot of people felt betrayed. A tightness crept into her throat. She swallowed and went on. After that, some people left and never came back, but many stayed. Some could not leave. Some did not want to leave. Streets sat empty for years. Houses were moldy shells. But music came back early. Food stands came back early. People cooked for each other in ruined blocks. They painted bright colors on broken walls. They held festivals in half-repaired squares. She looked around the room from far away. That can look like making light of what happened, like pretending things are fine. But that is not what it is. It is people saying, we are still here, and we still know how to dance. We still know how to feed each other. We still know how to laugh. That feeling keeps people together long enough to do the hard, boring work. Filling out forms, fixing pipes, redrawing risk maps. Rebuilding takes years. Joy helps people keep coming back to that work. A student near the back raised a limb. So the music and the food are like energy bars for the mind? They asked. Leila smiled a little. Yes, she said, you could say that. The field shifted to show another city. Tall buildings, wide roads, a river of metal and glass, then slow images of empty streets, closed factories, and homes with boarded windows. This is Detroit, she said. It was famous for building cars, for a fast, busy life. Then over many decades, jobs left, money left, people left. It was not a single disaster. It was slow. That can be even harder. In some ways, you do not know which day is the worst because every year is just a little bit worse. She walked slowly as she spoke, keeping her voice steady. People made jokes about Detroit for a long time. They called it a dead city, but people were still living there. They were growing food in empty lots. They were opening small shops in buildings with broken windows above them. They were making art, playing music, starting community groups to take care of kids and elders. She turned to face the class. Joy, in that case, did not erase the problems. There was still poverty. There was still crime. But without joy, people would have left each other alone with those problems. They would not have formed groups. They would not have shared rides or tools. They would not have stayed long enough to start new things. The field changed again. Now it showed images from old recordings of a city, flattened by a nuclear blast, then rebuilt towers and quiet peace parks. Years later, Hiroshima, Leila said. Everyone in this room probably knows this name. Humans dropped an atomic bomb on this city during a war. The blast killed tens of thousands of people in an instant. Many more died later from radiation and injuries. For a long time, the land itself felt poisoned. The horror of it still shapes my world. Some students look down. Nuclear weapons were one of the parts of human history that made many other species uneasy at a deep level. When people talk about Hiroshima, Leila said, they often think only about the bomb, the flash, the mushroom cloud. But if you visit now, you will see people walking to work, children crossing bridges, shops, schools. You will see memorials and quiet spaces for mourning, but you will also see daily life. You might even see a festival. She let that picture sit in the room for a moment. Some visitors from other planets see that and feel confused or upset. She said, they asked, how can you live normal lives on ground where such horror happened? How can you have festivals here? How can you smile? It feels disrespectful to them. She shook her head. But from human eyes, she said, it is the opposite of disrespect. It is a way to say, you tried to end us here. You failed. Life continues. We remember the dead, but we also honor them by not stopping. Grief and joy live side by side. They are not enemies for us. They help each other. She lowered her hand. The field dimmed. Senkale raised an arm. I hear what you say, they began. Their voice held a low, careful tone, but it still sounds like romanticizing suffering, turning pain into something pretty or noble. My people do not do that. We are trained to avoid harm, to avoid risk. If someone smiled during a disaster, they would be sent for medical check. A few students nodded in agreement. Leila nodded too. I understand why it looks that way from outside, she said. They act like people are better if they have suffered, or like pain is a test that makes heroes. I do not agree with that. Pain can damage people. It can twist them. Trauma is not a prize. It is something we have to heal. Then what is this smiling? Sen pressed. If it is not denial and not romanticizing, what is it? It is a skill, Leila said. Something we practice, like first aid, like learning to swim. It is emotional first aid for groups. Oren leaned forward. But you also said it is a tool against despair. They reminded her. Tools can be used in many ways. Some are helpful, some are weapons. Does your joy ever get used in dangerous ways? For example, to ignore problems, or to push others to work harder than is fair. Leila did not look away. Yes, she said, joy can be misused. Anything powerful can. If leaders only tell people to smile and dance, and never let them grieve or speak anger, then joy becomes a cage. It becomes a way to control people, to keep them from demanding better. She took a breath. But that is not what I am talking about, she said. I am talking about joy that grows from the people, not from above. Jokes in line for aid. Not a slogan from a company. A pot of shared food on a street, not a speech from a leader. Small, shared acts that say, you and I are in this together, and we are still human. That kind of joy is not a cage. It is a bridge. Professor Wren raised a hand slightly. Leila, may I ask something? They said. Of course, she answered. You have shown us 3 places, Wren said. New Orleans after storms. Detroit after slow decline. Hiroshima after nuclear devastation. In each case, joy appears. How does this joy actually change practical outcomes? Leila thought for a moment. She wanted to use clear, simple words. Joy keeps people talking, she said. When people gather to eat and tell stories, they share information. Who needs help? Which part of the levee is weak? Which factory might reopen? Problems get solved faster when people are already in the same room, already used to helping each other. She held up a finger. Joy also lowers fear just enough so people can think, she said. If you are too afraid, your body goes into fight or freeze. You stop planning. A song, a laugh, a little dance on a street with no power. These things remind the body that it is still alive. Breathing slows. Hands stop shaking so much. Then people can make better choices. Another finger, and it stops revenge from eating everything, she added. After a disaster, especially a man-made one, there is anger. Some anger is fair and needed. It can fuel change. But if it burns too hot, people start wanting to hurt anyone they see as other. They stop seeing neighbors. They see enemies. Joy helps people remember that life is not just pain and blame. It gives space for kindness, so anger does not take all the air. Senkale's eyes sharpened. But your history shows that sometimes anger did take all the air, they said. Wars lasted generations. Groups turned on each other. You said joy was meant to keep that from happening. Did it fail? Leila did not look away. Sometimes it failed. We are not perfect. There were times when people could not find joy, or were told they did not deserve it. There were times when fear and hate were fed on purpose by those in charge. That is part of our story, too. She took a slow breath and let it out. But when joy worked, she said softly, it pulled people back from that edge. Think about it as a hand on the shoulder of someone who is about to do something they can never undo. A joke between two people from different sides, a shared song around a fire, a festival where everyone, rich and poor, stands under the same sky. These things do not erase harm, but they make it harder to see others as only targets. The room had grown very still again. Oren spoke, voice thoughtful. So when we saw smiles in the footage, they said slowly, we assumed they were numb, that humans had become used to disaster. But you are saying the opposite, that those smiles were active, chosen, not always conscious. Leila said, sometimes it is just habit. Like how people from storm zones keep extra water without thinking about it. But yes, in many cases, it is a choice. My mother taught me to do it on purpose. She let herself remember her mother's face in the dull light of storm candles, rain beating against boarded windows, water rising in the street outside. When I was 8, Leila said, we had a storm that knocked power out for days. The house shook. The wind screamed. I was terrified. After the worst passed, my mother looked around our half-flooded living room and said, okay, who is ready for indoor boat races? She put plastic tubs on the floor and let me and my cousins float toys in the dirty water. We laughed so hard we could not breathe. A few students tilted their heads, startled. That did not make the damage go away, Leila said. The floor still had to be ripped up. The walls still had to dry. But that game kept us kids from spiraling into pure fear. It gave the adults a little quiet to think. It gave us a happy memory connected to a day that could have been only horror. She looked slowly around the hall. So yes, she said, joy can be a weapon. But not against other people. It is a weapon against despair. Against the part of the mind that says, There is no point in trying. Humans do not always aim it well. But we have learned, over many generations of storms and wars and slow disasters, that if we stop aiming it at all, we fall apart. Silence filled the room. It was not empty silence. It felt dense with thought. At last, Sen Kale spoke again, more quietly this time. I am afraid of what your species can do when it feels it must win, they admitted. Your history justifies that fear, but I am also curious about what happens when you focus this practiced joy on helping, not conquering. Leila gave a small, tired smile. So am I, she said. Oh, that is part of why I am here. Professor Wren raised a hand slightly. We will now open brief discussion, they said. I ask that you treat joy as seriously as you would treat any technology. Consider where it appears in human networks. Consider how it spreads. Consider what conditions support it and what conditions choke it. They looked around the hall, and remember, Wren added, for humans, a smile in the dark is not always a mask. Sometimes it is a signal, stay. Help, we can fix this together. Around Leila, the students shifted, minds turning. Joy had stopped being just an odd human quirk. It had begun to look like something else entirely. Entirely a quiet, deliberate survival tool that wore the simple face of a smile. The ring's days almost never surprised anyone. That was the whole point. Leila woke at her usual hour to the same soft gold light on her ceiling, the same gentle pull of gravity, the same quiet hum of systems under the floor. Her schedule for the day glowed on her personal device. Breakfast, human conflict history, a lab session in comparative culture, then study time. It looked like another smooth, safe day on Meridian Collegium. She dressed in her usual station clothes and stepped into the corridor. Students walked in both directions, some chatting, some lost in thought. A pair of tall, furred students from the Cold Moons shuffled past, laughing about a funny translation mishap. A group of slim, floating shapes drifted above the floor, harness rings glinting softly. Leila fell into step with Oren as they joined the slow flow toward the main lifts. You gave them a lot to think about, Oren said. Their voice held calm respect. Sen Kale has not stopped talking about joy as emotional first aid since last session. Leila smiled sideways. I noticed, she said. I heard them arguing about it in the dining hall last night. They think I am overrating human self-control. Are you? Oren asked. Probably a little, Leila said. It is hard not to when you are the only human in the room. Oren's eyes flashed with quiet amusement. Today's topic is systemic collapse, they said. Professor Wren will show us what happens when networks fail. And Professor Wren will show us what happens when networks fail. I am curious how your joy tool fits into that. Me too, Leila said. I hope we have time to talk about community drills. Practice runs, I mean. We used to... She did not finish the sentence. The light above them flickered. It was a tiny thing. Barely a stutter, less than a second. But in a place where the light never changed, suddenly, it was like a shout in a silent room. Several students stopped walking. A few looked up, frowning. The light steadied again, soft and steady as always. Probably a local adjustment, Oren said, though their voice held a note of doubt. Maintenance list is always long in week 9. Leila's skin prickled. Back home, a light flicker like that during heavy rain meant the grid was starting to strain. It was a small warning that bigger loss might follow. But this was Meridian, where nothing broke. They started walking again. The corridor opened into a wider hub where several paths met. Students flowed into the space from all directions. Soft sounds filled the air, shoes on the floor, low talk, the buzz of personal devices. The second flicker came without warning. This time, it was longer. The gold light winked out for 2 full seconds, plunging them into sudden gray. Then came back on. Around Leila, bodies tensed. A few students gave startled sounds, sharp clicks, and short gasps. Then an alarm pulsed through the air. It was not a harsh siren. It was a deep tone that rose and fell, steady and slow. On Meridian, alarms were designed to be calming, to give clear information without panic. But almost no one in this section had ever heard this particular tone outside of drills in childhood. Pressure fluctuation detected, a clear voice said from hidden speakers. Non-critical. Please remain calm. Await further instructions. Leila felt her heart jump. Pressure alarms were serious. Even a non-critical notice meant the station's life skin had felt something strange. The light flickered again, not just once, but 3 times in quick, uneven bursts. The steady hum under Leila's feet dropped in pitch, then surged back up. Gravity shifted for a moment, just enough that stomachs flipped and knees bent. Someone near her stumbled and grabbed a friend's arm. Then the light went out. Not a flicker, not a dimming. Total black. The shift hit her body before her mind could catch up. The brief loss of gravity made her inner ear spin. Her feet felt too light. The floor seemed to tilt, even though it did not move much at all. Someone screamed. A high, thin sound. It cut through the hub, pulling other screams with it, like a chain reaction. The deep alarm tone kept sounding, but the voice that had spoken before did not return. Whatever system used to send calm messages had lost power or link. In the dark, Leila heard chaos start to grow. A body bumped hard into her shoulder. Another brushed past her hip. People grabbed for rails and for each other. Claws slid on the smooth floor. A heavy tail slammed into a wall. A smaller body fell and cried out. I cannot see. Is this a hull breach? Stay back. Do not. Voices tangled, rose, cut over each other. Panic climbed the walls like fast ivy. Leila's first instinct was the same old one: check for water at the door. Grab the go bag. But there was no door here. No bag. Just a wide hub full of frightened minds that had never been taught to practice being scared. She stood very still and forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, Out through the mouth, her mother's voice sounded in her memory. When the lights go out, baby, you go checklist. She started a mental list. First, light. Her hands flew to the side pocket of her bag. She always carried 2 small glow sticks. Out of habit more than fear, she found the smooth plastic of one and snapped it hard. The thin cylinder bent and cracked inside. Mixing the chemicals, a soft green light bloomed in her palm. Around her, faces turned toward the glow. Eyes, lenses, sensory ridges. In the sea of black, that small circle of light felt like a tiny sun. Everyone around me, Leila called out, raising her voice just enough to carry. I have a light. Move slowly. No pushing. Some nearby students latched onto her voice like a lifeline. Is it a breach? Someone asked. I do not know yet, Leila said. Honesty had always been safer in crisis than false calm. The alarm said non-critical, and we still have air. That gives us time to think. So let's do that. Her brain ran down the next item. Second, space. She held up the glow stick and turned slowly, shining it around the hub. The green light swept past tight clusters of bodies. Some students clung to each other, shaking. Others tried to move in opposite directions, blocking each other's paths. Stop moving so much, Leila said. Firm but not sharp. You will trip. Sit or kneel where you are if you can. We will make a path. Her voice held the same tone she had used with younger cousins during storms. Not sugar sweet. Not harsh. Just steady. A few students obeyed at once, sitting or kneeling. Others hesitated, then followed when they saw their friends do it. The motion level in the room dropped a bit. Leila felt the gravity settle again. Closer to normal, the hum under the floor climbed slowly back toward its usual pitch, though it still wobbled now and then. Third, people. Is anyone hurt? She called. If you are injured or stuck, say help and keep saying it until someone answers you. A small voice called, help, from her left, then another. Deeper one from further away, a faint clicking sound, which she guessed was the help word for a different tongue. Oren? Leila said, turning toward where she had last seen them. I am here, Oren answered from just behind her. Their voice shook a little, but they were still thinking. I can help. Take this. She pressed the glow stick into Oren's hand. Hold it high, and keep turning slowly so people can see. We are going to get to the ones who called for help without trampling anyone. What about you? Oren asked. I have another, she said, pulling out the second stick and snapping it. Soft blue light joined the green. She moved toward the closest help voice, stepping carefully between seated bodies. Stepping carefully between seated bodies. Keep saying help so I can find you, she called. I am here, the small voice said. A little louder, my leg is caught. Leila's blue glow washed over a student with light fur and wide eyes. Their leg was trapped under a fallen bag and a half-toppled storage pod that had been resting against the wall. Okay, I see you, Leila said. I am going to lift this pod. Can anybody nearby help me? 3 hands reached out from the shadows. A scaled one, a soft-fleshed one, a hard, segmented one. Together, they braced and pushed. The pod shifted, then lifted just enough for the trap student to pull their leg free. "Does it hurt to move?" Leila asked. "A little," they said. Voice shaky, "But I can bend it. Then sit and keep it still." She said, "Someone will stay near you until the lights come back. What is your name?" "Rill," they said. "You did well." Calling out, "Stay put." As she turned to the next help voice, a different shout tore across the hub. "This is a systems failure." A tall student yelled, voice cracking, "The ring is going to lose spin." "We are all going to." "Stop," Leila said, sharply this time. The tall student froze in the thin circle of blue light. "Do not say that," she added in a calmer tone. "You do not know that, and it is not helping anyone. Panic is like fire. Do not add fuel unless you are sure." The student's mouth opened, then closed. Their hands shook. After a moment, they swallowed and sat down hard, as if their legs had given out. Leila did not blame them. She was scared too. The difference was that she had had practice being scared. Another flicker passed through the dark as some emergency backup tried to start and failed. A few dim red strips along the floor lit for a second, then died again. The hub felt like a deep cave under the star. The alarm tone kept sounding, slow and heavy. Still no clear voice. Leila finished helping the second help caller, who had only lost balance and bruised an arm. Then she moved back toward the center, where Oren still stood with the green glow stick raised, like a tiny beacon. "Oren," she said, touching their shoulder, "can you feel the air? Any rush, any change in pressure?" Oren closed their eyes for a moment and seemed to concentrate. Their species had sensitive pressure senses along the side of the neck plates. "It is steady," they said, at last. "Slight fluctuation during the gravity dips, but no fast loss. No whistle, no pull. So we are not venting into space," Leila said. Relief washed through her, followed at once by fresh focus. "Good. That buys us more time. What do we do now?" Oren asked. "We cannot contact Central. Backup grid must be offline." Leila looked around at the vague shapes sitting and crouching in the dark. "Now," she said, "we keep people from freezing up or going wild. We give their minds something steady to hold." She climbed up onto a low bench near the center of the hub. It wobbled under the uneven gravity, but held. Holding the blue glow stick high, she raised her voice. "Everyone, listen," she called. "My name is Leila Carter. I grew up in a place with storms and blackouts. I am scared right now, too. That is okay, but I know some things that help." Some heads turned toward her. Others still stared into the dark, lost in their own thoughts. "First," she said, "if you are sitting or kneeling, stay that way unless you have a clear reason to move. If you are standing and feel wobbly, crouch down. We are safer if we are not bumping into each other." Bodies shifted. More people lowered themselves toward the floor. Second, Leila went on. Breathe with me. In for 3 counts, out for 4. Ready? In, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4. She drew the breath herself, slow and even. In the dark, some students copied her. A few at first, then more. The air filled with the soft sound of many chests rising and falling together. She repeated the count several times. In, 2, 3, out, 2, 3, 4. The noise in the room dropped. The sharp, panicked voices faded. Even those who did not follow the count seemed to calm just by listening. Good, she said. After a little while, if you start to feel panic rise again, go back to the breathing. It keeps your thinking brain online. A voice from the edge called out, shaky but clear. How long will this last? I do not know, Leila said, but the station has backups. Systems teams train for this. Our job is to make their work easier by not adding extra chaos. She thought of her neighbors, back home, holding small gatherings in dark houses while Lyman worked outside on broken wires. Third, she said, we are going to make some order in here. People near each wall. Raise a hand if you can help guide others. You will be our anchors. She watched as hands, tendrils, and limbs rose in the blue-green light along the edges of the hub. You are now wall guides, she said. If someone near you starts to panic or tries to rush, talk to them. Steady them. If we need to move, we will move slowly along the walls first. People close to the center, you are core. Your job is to keep conversation going. Ask your neighbors their names. Make small groups. A few students made uncertain noises. Talk, someone asked. Now? Yes, Leila said. Talk. Tell each other where you are from. Tell each other the strangest food you have ever eaten. It does not matter what. The goal is to remind your brain that you are here with other living beings, not trapped alone in a nightmare. She hopped down from the bench. As she moved through the hub, she heard the first awkward questions start up. Where are you from? I am from Kethri 3. You? What does your home sky look like? The conversations were stiff at first, forced and clumsy. Leila found a small cluster huddled close, eyes wide, bodies shaking. Hi, she said. I am Leila. I come from a city with too much water and very good food. What about you? A tiny student with translucent skin blinked. I am from a habitat where the sun is always very far. They said, it is cold. We do not have storms. Just deep, steady snow. That sounds beautiful, Leila said. Do you have stars? Yes, they said.